The first day at a new school is always a fresh hell, but for Lena, it felt like an eternity of quiet torment. She walked through the bustling hallways of Northwood High, a ghost in a sea of vibrant, confident teenagers. She clutched her textbooks to her chest, her knuckles white, her gaze fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor. Her olive green sundress, a simple, comfortable garment she had chosen for its ability to blend in, felt like a beacon drawing every eye. Lena was not a girl who sought attention. She was an expert in the art of vanishing. She had perfected the slight hunch of her shoulders, the quick, sidelong glance, and the silent step. Her goal was to get to her locker, get her books, and get home without a single person noticing her existence. It was a strategy born of necessity, not weakness. On the surface, Lena was a meek, unassuming girl with long dark hair that she used as a curtain to hide her face. Her voice was a whisper, and her answers in class were always as brief as possible. But beneath that carefully constructed veneer of shyness was a core of pure, tempered steel. For 12 years, she had trained in martial arts under her grandfather, a retired sensei, whose dojo was a place of discipline and unyielding focus. He had taught her not only to fight, but, more importantly, to avoid fighting. A true master knows that the most effective blow is the one that is never thrown, he would say, his voice a low rumble. Lena had taken his words to heart, applying them to her life. Her shyness was her armor, a shield to deflect confrontation. But some things, no matter how much you try to avoid them, are inevitable. Northwood High had a social hierarchy as rigid as any feudal system, and at the top of the food chain was Brittany. Brittany was an amalgam of designer clothes and malicious intent, flanked by her two loyal lieutenants, Tiffany and Jess. They stalked the hallways like apex predators, their laughter sharp and predatory. Lena had seen them in the morning, their eyes sweeping the crowd for new targets. She had ducked into the library to avoid their gaze, but as the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day, she was caught in the great migration to the buses. She was just a few feet from the lockers when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Her body tensed, an instinctual reaction she fought to suppress. She kept her face down, hoping to pass for someone else. Well, what do we have here? Brittany's voice, a saccharine sing-song, cut through the din of the hallway. A little field mouse trying to scurry away. Tiffany and Jess snickered, forming a tight circle around Lena. The hallway, moments before a bustling river of students, now seemed to part around them, creating a small island of conflict. Students slowed down, their phones raised, a silent audience hungry for drama. "I'm sorry," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm just trying to get to my locker." "Oh, she's trying to get to her locker," Jess mocked, her voice a cruel caricature of Lena's. "And she's got a little old dress on." "So sweet." Brittany's eyes narrowed, a cruel glint within them. "That dress is tragically out of style. Don't you think it needs a little improvement?" A cold dread settled in Lena's stomach. She felt her meticulously constructed wall of anonymity start to crumble. She looked up for the first time, her large, brown eyes meeting Brittany's cold blue ones. Brittany's face twisted into a sneer. "It's not for you to judge," Lena said, her voice still quiet but with a newfound firmness. The unexpected response seemed to surprise Brittany. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Feisty, I like it. But not enough to let you go." Tiffany grabbed Lena's arm, her grip like a vice. Jess reached out and grabbed the neckline of Lena's dress. Lena instinctively tried to pull away, but their combined strength was too much. The sound of fabric ripping was a small explosion in the sudden, eerie silence of the hallway. A long, jagged tear appeared, running from the neckline of the sundress down to the waist. A gasp went through the crowd. Lena's face flushed a deep crimson. The shame was a physical blow, a hot, searing wave that threatened to consume her. She stood there, frozen, the torn fabric hanging precariously from her shoulder. Her grandfather's words, a voice of reason in her head, screamed at her to disengage, to walk away, to ignore the humiliation, but another voice, a primal, long-suppressed voice, rose to meet it. It was the voice of every person who had ever been pushed too far, who had ever been made to feel small. Brittany smirked, her victory complete. "Oops, looks like your dress has a little ventilation." That was the line. The final, unforgivable act. The shame that had just moments ago threatened to overwhelm her was suddenly replaced by a cold, righteous fury. It started in her gut, a low burn that quickly spread through her veins. The world seemed to slow down. The faces of the onlookers blurred into a canvas of shocked expressions. The mocking laughter of the bullies faded into a distant hum. She took a deep breath. Her grandfather had always taught her that the most powerful weapon was a calm mind. In that moment, her mind was a still, clear lake. She saw everything. The position of Brittany's feet. The way Tiffany was still gripping her arm. The angle of Jess's approach as she moved to tear the dress further. The escape routes, there were none. This was not a moment for de-escalation. This was a moment for action. Without a sound, Lena's posture changed. The hunched shoulders straightened. Her spine became a rod of iron. Her feet, previously planted together in a stance of defensive meekness, shifted. She was no longer a field mouse. She was a coiled spring. Tiffany, still holding Lena's arm, was the first to feel it. Lena's hand, which had been clutching her books, shot out like a cobra's strike. It wasn't a punch, or a slap, but a quick, decisive blow to Tiffany's wrist. Tiffany gasped, her grip shattering as her hand went numb. Her books, no longer held captive, scattered across the floor, their pages fluttering like startled birds. Jess, seeing her friend recoil, lunged forward with a renewed cruelty in her eyes, but she was slow. Lena's leg was already moving, a blur of motion. She executed a perfect mawashi jeri, a roundhouse kick, but not with full force. It was a feint, a maneuver designed to distract. As Jess instinctively raised her arms to block, Lena's other hand, open and sharp as a blade, came down in a clean, swift arc. The motion was so fast that many in the crowd thought it was an accident. It wasn't. It was the shuto, the knife hand block. The edge of her hand connected precisely with a pressure point on Jess's arm, just above the elbow. A sharp crack echoed in the hallway. Jess cried out, a sound of genuine pain, and collapsed to her knees, clutching her arm. Brittany, who had been watching with a mixture of amusement and confusion, now stood alone, facing a girl who had transformed before her very eyes. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. The shy, mousy girl was gone. In her place was a warrior. What did you do?" Brittany stammered, her bravado evaporating. Lena said nothing. She didn't need to. Her movements were her language. Her eyes, no longer shy and downcast, burned with a fierce, unwavering light. Brittany, in a panic, swung her bag at Lena, a desperate, clumsy move, but Lena wasn't there. She moved with a speed and grace that seemed inhuman. She sidestepped the attack, her footwork a dance of precision. As Brittany's momentum carried her past, Lena's right hand came up, palm open. She didn't need a running start or a theatrical pose. This was the moment. This was the blow her grandfather had taught her to reserve. Her hand, a testament to 12 years of calluses and discipline, came down with the force of a hammer, not in a fist, but with a stiff, rigid edge. The target was the side of Brittany's neck, just below the ear. The shuto uchi, the karate chop. The strike was clean and percussive. A dull thud echoed in the stunned silence of the hallway. Brittany's eyes went wide with shock and a sudden, all-consuming pain. She didn't fall so much as crumple, her knees buckling, her body sliding down the lockers. She lay there, unconscious, a silent heap of expensive clothes and shattered confidence. The hallway was now completely silent. All sound had been swallowed by the collective shock. The air hummed with a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Students stood frozen, their mouths agape, their phones now useless witnesses to a spectacle no one could have predicted. Lena stood over her fallen bullies, her chest rising and falling in deep, measured breaths. Her torn dress was a symbol of her previous self, and now, a badge of honor. She looked down at the crumpled heap that was Brittany, then at the groaning figures of Tiffany and Jess. She felt no malice, no triumph, only a quiet, resolute peace. She had done what was necessary. Someone in the crowd coughed. The spell was broken. A wave of whispered words swept through the hallway. "Did you see that? What was that? That girl. She's incredible." Lena reached down and calmly picked up her textbooks. The ripped fabric of her dress felt foreign now, a relic of a time that was already past. She adjusted her grip on her books, her hands steady, her shoulders back. The silence in the hallway was no longer hostile, it was respectful. A path cleared for her as she walked toward her locker. A silent deference from the same students who had just moments ago been spectators to her humiliation. She retrieved her bus pass and a small, well-worn duffel bag from her locker. She slipped on a hoodie from the bag, zipping it up to cover the torn dress. The green fabric was now a secret, a story told only by her. She didn't need to explain. Her actions had spoken louder than any words ever could. She walked out of the school and into the crisp autumn air. The bus was waiting. She got on, finding an empty seat near the back. She sat, not with her head down, but with her chin slightly raised, her gaze fixed on the world outside the window. The trees lining the street, the houses blurring past, they were all new. So was she. She was no longer just the shy new girl. She was Lena, and she had just begun. News of the incident spread like wildfire. By the next morning, Lena's story was legend. The shy girl who had single-handedly taken down Brittany and her crew with a single, precise chop became a myth, an icon. Students who had once ignored her now stared with a mixture of awe and fear. The bullies, now the laughingstocks of the school, avoided the hallways and walked with their heads down. The power dynamic of Northwood High had been shattered, a new order established by a quiet girl who had simply had enough. Lena walked through the halls with her head held high, a quiet confidence radiating from her. She no longer had to hide. The armor of shyness was no longer needed. She was strong. She had always been strong. She just had to show them. Her grandfather called that night. I heard a story, my little warrior, he said, his voice a proud, low rumble on the phone. I'm sorry, Sensei, Lena said, her voice soft. I know you said to avoid confrontation. And you did, he replied. You avoided it until it became unavoidable. And then you handled it with grace and precision. The most effective blow is the one that brings peace, even if it is a single, swift strike. Lena smiled. The torn dress was in a heap in her laundry basket, a relic of a past she had left behind in a single, powerful moment. She was not a victim. She was not a field mouse. She was a master, not of violence, but of her own destiny. The story of the shy new girl who knocked out her bullies with a single karate chop was just the beginning. The next chapter would be about a girl who, after finding her voice in a quiet moment of chaos, would never be silent again.